Thank you so much for joining Dental Marketing Theory, a podcast by Gary Bird. In today's episode, Gary talks with Chelsea Myers. Chelsea is the founder and CEO of Dental Life Coach. She chats with Gary on living in harmony with yourself, overcoming fear, and how dental entrepreneurs can develop an abundance-based mindset for success. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment, as all of those things really help to get the word out about dental marketing theory. Hope you enjoyed today's show.
All right, Chelsea, we are live. Good to have you today.
Hey, nice to see you, Gary.
Good to see you too, my friend. How have things been? You've been staying busy?
Oh my gosh, yes, it's been incredible. It's like everything shut down and then it came back with a vengeance, which is fantastic. But yeah, very, very busy, very good things. How are you?
Doing good. Same thing. Just busy. Really enjoying learning. I'm still learning this podcast thing, so bear with me today, okay?
Oh, good. Okay.
Awesome. So I wanted to start, we usually start with everybody's origin story, and I would love for you to share with our audience about how you grew up and how that led to your professional career, and then eventually how that led into the dental industry. Would you mind sharing that with us today?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Arizona. I'm the oldest of 4 children and had 2 really hardworking parents. Actually, I'm not sure if I've ever met more hardworking people than my parents. I think that my upbringing actually led to my career path because when I was 16, my father passed away. And like I said, both of my parents were really hardworking. So like without skipping a beat, my mom just kept on going and taking care of the family and was really, really diligent. And so I think kind of in mimicking that behavior and in an attempt to deal with things, I just plugged in, and whatever I was doing, I did it full-fledged, whether that was school or work or whatever I was doing. I just gave it my all, and I was going at a really fast pace, trying to grow into myself as an adult and also trying to manage my emotions. And you can only go at that pace, I think, for so long before it catches up with you, which it did with me. And that's where I started doing some research. At that time, it was a lot of books, and I was researching and learning and trying to figure out like, hey, what's actually going on with me, and why do I feel like I'm kind of more of a shell of myself than actually experiencing my life. And and I learned a lot, and I was able to take a step back and kind of like deal with some of the things that were going on and make decisions from a different place so that I could actually be energized in the things that I was doing.
Got it. And so roughly what stage of life were you in? Were you in college at that time, or where were you at in your life?
Yep. He passed away when I was 16, and it took me a few years to really realize that I was not dealing with things. Like, I think I was just doing the best that I could and not realizing that I was ignoring anything until it was just in my face. And then I was like, okay, so I'm not feeling fulfilled. What's going on? And I realized there was just some things lingering that I needed to deal with.
Got it. And I know imposter syndrome was something that you dealt with, right?
It was, because I was thinking, my parents are really hard workers. My dad, I'm the first college graduate on my dad's side. So my dad had to work really, really hard to provide for us the way that he wanted to. And my mom put herself through college while we were growing up, and she was working full time. So I'm doing those motions, I'm not sure that I even realized it was an option to not work that way. And what caught up with me was they were doing it from a place of like, that's what they wanted to do, and it fulfilled them, and it was their choice. And I was doing it kind of just trying to go through the motions, thinking it was going to get me where I wanted to go and make me feel the way I wanted to feel. And so, and that was early in my college career that I was just like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah. So how did you get on the right track? Where was that tipping point where you're like, okay, now I'm actually doing what I want to do?
Yeah. So I did some research, I did some studying, and it's like once I found one book, and it just it really stuck with me, and I still read it. It's called As a Man Thinketh, actually. It led me to other books, and I started like devouring them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would read a concept, try it out, and I'm like, yeah, that seems true. That rings true for me. And then I'd try another one, and I'm like, oh, this is getting better. And I was able to figure out, what does Chelsea want, and doing it from a place of genuine authenticity rather than because it's what somebody that I admired and looked up to did.
Got it. So now you had a kind of a mind shift, right? Probably a pretty transformational mind shift there, and you start moving in a different direction. When did dental pop into your life?
Yeah. So it's funny because numbers had always come really easy to me, and I enjoyed them enough. And so I decided to study business finance in school. And at the time, we were living in Gilbert, Arizona. And so I was out driving one day, and I was passing by a building that I hadn't really paid much attention to out in Mesa. And I pulled up and walked inside, and I learned that it was a dental school. And one of the directors was on his lunch, and he offered to show me around. And I remember being so moved by it, like something about the energy in that building. So I took the information that he gave me, and I thought really hard about changing course and going to dental school. And a part of me was so attracted to that, but something about it just didn't feel right. So I stayed the business.
What was that? What was it? What felt good about it? And then what was the part that didn't feel right to you?
What for sure felt good about it was the energy. I was attracted to the people there. I was attracted to what they were doing. It was a beautiful building. I don't know if you've been out there recently, but it was almost contagious, the high level of productivity and desire to learn and advance yourself. And I love that. And so I loved that feeling about it. But there was something that just didn't seem like the right move for me to make. And I couldn't put my finger on what that was then. I know now how it all comes full circle. It makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that it did. But yeah, at that time I just had to go with my gut and began my career at Wells Fargo Bank in a group that was implementing some updates to some systems processes, and I was there to help put those in place. And so I remember one of my supervisors actually coming and giving me a pep talk, and she was kind of trying to tell me what I was getting myself into. And I wondered where she was going with this, like, what did she mean? And I started working with the team and quickly learned that it wasn't the complexity of what it was that we were improving that was bottlenecking the changes, because these were incredibly talented and intelligent people I was working with, but it was the apprehension to change and resistance to anything uncomfortable that was getting in their own way. And even though what the company was trying to put in place was ultimately going to make their professional lives better and easier, there was a lot of resistance. And so I think I was able to spot that dissonance in them, the ability, like their abilities versus their mindset, because of my own experiences earlier. And so I spent a lot of time like kind of reflecting on what I had learned and what had really helped me pull myself out of a stalled position, and researched ways to coach and influence that team to help themselves through the project. And through those coaching experiences, I was really able to identify my passion and fire for developing EQ and high-performing professionals.
Now, you weren't there. That wasn't your job, right? Like your job wasn't to coach them through that, right?
Well, nobody told me to do that, but what I was required to do,
right?
wasn't happening. Yeah. It was.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying that you were off track or it was wrong. It was just like, they didn't bring you in to be a coach. They brought you in to get the job done. And then you ended up having to coach through it because it wasn't happening. And so that's how you found your passion, which is really cool. And so you probably realized pretty quickly that Wells Fargo wasn't going to be the place that was going to be fostered.
Yeah, what was really interesting was that there was a supervisor nearby in another department, and he was watching and noticing the transformation of this team I was working with. And not just from a tactical standpoint, but from like the morale and the energy that they were exhibiting. And so he pulled me aside one day and he was like, hey, what are you teaching them? And can I learn this too? So using the resources that I had been using with that team, I organized a curriculum to work through with him. And it worked. It produced the results that he was looking for. So he referred a friend of his to me who was a dentist, and I coached him the same way, and he experienced major improvements. And I had never forgotten that feeling that I'd had years earlier when I was walking through that dental school. And so now seeing that my passions and talents had helped a clinician, he became a really valuable thought partner for me. And I learned a lot about the variables that are unique to dentists' lives, particularly, and in his case, dentists who are both practicing and a partner. And so he referred me some of his dental friends to work with. And I kept learning and refining with each client that I'd work with, which at that time was in the evening after my 9-to-5 job. And I came to realize a couple of things. The first was that this is a really underserved area, the need for mindset training for dentists. And the second was that I was able to provide value to these people. And so
that is so cool. That is so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really energizing, and it's amazing to be a part of that experience with them. But I finished my last contract in 2015, I think, and decided to dedicate my professional life to coaching dentists. And by that time, I'd partnered with some dental businesses, giving me some additional perspective and insight, and I'd coached several doctors. And what I didn't realize, Gary, and I'll tell you this, what I didn't realize when I stepped full-time into entrepreneurship in the dental industry was that I was about to get the experience firsthand that a lot of my clients have. The things that I'm coaching them on were exactly the things I was walking right into. And I had thought, and actually this is really common, but I had thought that because I was coaching on them and because I had the knowledge and the tools, that it wasn't going to impact me. I'd already be ahead of it. But actually that wasn't, I still got the opportunity to exercise those things. And so
that's so cool. I think one of the things that really resonates, or the reason that we connect, is I got started in dentistry very similar, right? So number one, there's a rule in dental. Once you get into dental, you're not allowed to leave. So that's rule number one. And yeah, exactly. And so I mean, there's so many people we bump into that are in dental, and they're just like, hey, I kind of accidentally ended up here. I love it, and I'm just kind of here for life. That's number one. But number two, we were doing marketing for pretty much everybody underneath the sun besides dentist. And we had a lot of sports, a lot of restaurants, a lot of professionals, and somebody referred us to a dentist, and we're like, sure, we'll give it a shot. And they went from $90,000 a month in production to 480, 500 in that ballpark over several years, and in a very competitive market. And that's how we broke into the dental market, is we were able to show results. And over time, we eventually got out of all the other industries and just focused on dental because we loved it so much. So I love that. So for those listening, I know one of the things that you do is mindset coaching. Could you break that down for us?
Yeah. I think the way that I would think about it is, I've been flying a lot lately. So this example just comes to mind when you say that. But before you take off, they're always going through their tutorial about how to use the oxygen mask and to make sure that you put yours on first so that you don't pass out helping other people. And the thing about being a high performer is that we generally have a really high tolerance for involved or emotionally charged situations. And that's a really good thing. But because we're so engaged in all of the moving parts, we may not be attentive to our maxing out point. And so when we're maxing out, we're no longer delivering the same connection, the same results. We're not able to create useful energy or be as productive, right? And so we've got to put that oxygen mask on ourselves first. And so our clinicians, it's so important because they are leading teams. They're leaving impressions on the community, and they're oftentimes building families of their own. And if they're not getting what they need, they're not going to be able to step up as an owner. So examples of personal oxygen might be daily habits like morning meditation or workouts. They're writing, reading, taking a break from tech, making time for hobbies. These are all components of what I would describe as managing your mind around the developmental processes involved in becoming a dental entrepreneur.
I love that. Yeah. And that's, I love when you talk about these kind of things, because I always feel like you're talking to me, right? Like I'm like, oh yeah, I need to start doing those things, right? And I always try to get better, right? I have a morning routine, I work out, all those kind of things. But these are all things that I've added over time to help me get better. And I know that you help build mindsets or mental frameworks for people to work through. I love your airline example of the air masks falling down, because that's exactly what it is. You can't go and put everybody else's air mask on until you take care of yours. So what right now, because you talk to all these dentists, you talk to these organizations, what's the number one thing that's actually slowing down these clinicians from being who they want to be?
I think, like most people, clinicians start out with really genuine and positive energy toward whatever it is that they want to do, and maybe don't always have access to the tools and support that they need to do it. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So until you're in motion of trying to make something happen, you don't realize that you may need to grab some information here or develop a skill over there. And so at Dental Life Coach, we provide doctors with rich content to study from, materials to practice with, access to regular weekly focus calls, getting coaching on current real world examples. It doesn't need to be overwhelming or mysterious, but the access to support needs to be there in order to grow into the role that each clinician wants to have.
So and I love that. I love that you guys focus on that. So what would you say the number one thing that's slowing these guys down, guys or ladies, that's slowing them down right now that you're seeing universally?
I think fear. I think there's a lot of fear-based decision-making, actively or inactively, and being willing to be uncomfortable to create the results that you want in your life it's not just a component. It is everything. You have to step into it and be 100% dedicated to creating the results you want to create. And if you're looking to the guy or girl to your left and you're comparing what that person's doing, or you're arguing with reality, this is what this is for me right now, and I expected it to be this other way, those things are all deterrents from the focus that's needed to get where you want to go.
Yeah, because fear tells us don't do it, right? Because of all the bad things that are going to happen. But it starts to squeeze out all the good stuff that could happen. And one of the topics that you just brought up, I actually had on my list to discuss with you, is comparison. Tell me a little bit about comparison and how that really steals from the joy of the process, from your side of things.
You know what's really funny? I was on a road trip once. I like to answer a question with a story. So I was on a road trip once with a friend of mine, and we were driving out in this beautiful area of Colorado. And on her side is this beautiful mountainside, and she's the one driving. And then on my side, there's this drop off in a beautiful lake. Okay. And for a few minutes, she kept, every time we turn a corner, she'd be like tapping me on the shoulder, be like, "Hey, look over here, look over here, look over here." And I get to see whatever it was that she was seeing and enjoying. And I enjoyed it with her. And after a few minutes of this, I was like, gosh, I like what she's saying. I want to see my view now. And I think that happens a lot, that in an effort to be thorough, or in an effort to make sure that we're doing the right thing, we compare, or we go through all of the options beyond what is really productive for us. And instead of focusing on building and getting stronger and developing and creating what we want, we are worried more about what somebody else is doing or not doing, or how it could be different or should be different, or would be easier if this other thing was different. It's just not usually a very high value activity to compare what you have versus what somebody else has, or what you have and what you don't yet have.
Yeah, and it really does lead to depression. There's a lot of clinical studies on social media and young people having depression because they're constantly comparing each other, and a lot of times you're comparing not a real story, right? Like, you're not really getting the full story of the other side. You're just getting this nice, pretty picture, and you're going, well, my picture isn't as pretty, but you're not getting the full story behind that. So I think I've personally seen that that comparison really does steal from your joy, and I 100% agree with you on that one. Also, another thing that I know that's a really hot topic right now is soft skills versus hard skills. What's your mindset on that?
Yeah. So I think that particularly people who are newer to thought work, it seems like something that you might just, read a couple chapters from a book to enhance once in a while, or kind of more like a Pinterest post where it's like, oh, a fleeting thought, that's nice, and then you scroll on. But mind management and entrepreneurial mindset is a lifestyle. It's not an activity. And so it requires daily strength training. It requires regular participation and activity on your part. It only takes 24 hours to have a new collection of things to work through and to grow from. But if you're not maximizing your opportunity to do that, then you're falling behind. I don't believe that you can ever be stagnant in your emotional intelligence. I think that you're either growing it or you're going to fall behind. You're going to go backwards.
Yeah. It really, I had someone, it was Josie. Josie was on the podcast and she said, work-life balance is a lie. She says it's harmony. And especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you don't get to turn it off at 5:00, right? My brain is always on, always working, and always working through that. And so I definitely agree with you on that one. Where do you draw the line between being selfish and having self-care?
Well, that's a good question. So I think that, if you were to look, for example, at my calendar, and I think you know this, but I'm a pretty, I schedule everything. I'm very avid with my calendar.
Me too.
But if
Block
you were
scheduling.
Yeah, I think if you were to add up the amount of time I spend each week doing things that could be perceived as selfish, whether that's working out or I love to read or whatever I'm doing, it might seem like a lot of time that I could be doing something else or something for somebody else. But kind of back to the air mask thing, if I don't do those things, I'm not going to be my best self. And I'm not going to be the version of me that I'm trying to become. And so while it may seem selfish to take a lunch or to take a break or to engage in your favorite hobbies or take your spouse out on a date, it doesn't matter what the thing is. I think what happens is our own minds become a little confused about all of the long list of things we have to do, and then the ways to make our life enriching and exciting. And I think that you've got to do both. You cannot be, a dental life coach. We design everything around being healthy, happy, and successful. You can't have just one of those buckets. They all work in tandem.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and it's interesting because we were taught, right, like especially from the generations before of like, and your parents probably same thing, is like get a job, stay at that job, go to college, all these things that were created, these mindsets, right? And I found out really early on, it's like, I can't go to college. Like that's not the environment. It wasn't built for me. Like I'm all over the place. My brain's firing on all cylinders. And I don't understand why I'm in learning about rocks or geology or something like that. You know what I mean? And so there's these mental frameworks that are built, and we feel like we sometimes have to be squeezed into those. But I was watching a guy yesterday, and he had a very interesting perspective. He said there's seasons to how we do things, right? And this is kind of how I run my life. There's times where at work I'm really busy and I'm working a lot, like it's overload, and that there's seasons for that, right? And then I get harmony or balance in there, and I'm not working quite as much. And then there's times where I'm spending a lot of times with my kids, right? And we're doing sports, and we're going, and every day we're doing something after school, or we're going on trips, or we're doing things together. And then there's times where it's maybe an extended family member needs attention because they're sick, right? And I need to help them. So it's almost like you go through these seasons. And there is never this perfect scale that's like, oh, no, 9 to 5 is work. And then family time is, even though I would love it if it was that way, because it would be really easy, right? Because I could just block schedule it in. But it doesn't seem to ever pan out like that. Is that how you look at it? Is it a seasons that you're moving through, or how do you help people balance that?
Yeah, I love the way you're describing that. And I actually love that about you, Gary. You seem to be really okay with prioritizing the things that you want to when you feel like they're appropriate. And that's something that's really hard for people. I see a lot of people who, there's almost this ingrained, like you talked about it coming probably from childhood and past generations, but this ingrained expectation that you will always be doing something that on paper looks productive or looks to lead to an end result that other people can agree with. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people looked externally for permission to feel like it's okay to take that vacation or go play sports with the kids. And what we've got to do is come back, get back to our own selves and figure out what is it that I want to do? How do I want to organize this? What are my priorities? What will make me healthy and happy and successful? And your family's going to be a part of that. And your recreation is going to be a part of that. If your life is not enjoyable and exciting, that is kind of your fault, because you've got to you've got to make time for those things too, because otherwise, what happens is you reach the professional goals that you're working toward and you're kind of beat up and washed out when you get there, and you still don't feel very good because you're still looking externally. You're like, now is it okay for me to feel okay? Now can I go on that trip? And you've missed out on so many amazing things that could have been happening along the way.
I heard you say in there about skipping lunch. And I know I've heard you given the fountain and bucket analogy.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of along those same lines of looking externally. So I have a really good friend, and she has said to me multiple times, she's like, the only thing that makes me happy is knowing that my children are happy. And I worry for her because I think she's serious. And while we, of course, want our kids to be happy, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is when we base our own emotional life on the moving target of someone else's happiness and satisfaction, it's a gamble. And this, it's a high risk, low reward gamble, because people are always changing and what makes them happy is always changing. And so, really the best way I have found, and what I try and coach others on to connect with and to influence the type of energy that inspires others, is to become that yourself first.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know is a big issue in the dental industry is that it's prevalent everywhere, but specifically in dental, because of the nature of the clinical activity that dentists go through, there's a lot of micromanaging in areas, and rather than leading. How do you help people get through that and get away from the micromanaging and I want to be in every detail to I'm going to trust my team and I'm going to start leading?
Yeah, and that is a really big transition, particularly for our partner doctors. And so what we've got to develop is we've got to develop systems and filters, and we've got to know what is my job as the clinician, what pieces of that am I going to do, what pieces am I going to delegate, and then what is going to be the communication process to make sure that it's all flowing and that it's all functioning properly. And once I delegate that out, it might go right and it might go wrong, but now my job is no longer to micromanage it. My job is to help teach and inspire the change if needed, or provide the positive feedback if it goes right. And so really, I think, especially at first, it can be quite uncomfortable because there's such a desire to jump in and fix it or prevent something from going wrong. And there's going to be situations where you need to do that, but there are going to be enough situations where allowing things to unfold and then swinging back around and training on it will be much more effective in the long term for your team.
100%. And I think the big thing there is allowing people to fail. You have to be okay with failure. And if you're not okay with failure, you're actually aiming for perfection then, and that's not possible, right?
Correct.
And so if you can learn to fail forward, it really helps your team and give them that space to fail instead of micromanaging through. I've experienced that firsthand, and obviously I've made that mistake before where I'm micromanaging and instead of leading or allowing the team to fail and learn and grow. So changing gears on you, what are your thoughts around dentistry and the scarcity versus the abundance mindset?
Well, I think that that's a really, really important topic. It's actually one that I enjoy coaching on a lot. But I think first defining what is an abundant mindset is really, really important. And so an abundant mindset, I believe that no matter how successful I am as a coach or my company is, there can be other people around me doing something similar, and that doesn't take away from the good that I'm doing. That doesn't take away from my ability to grow as big as I want to grow or help as many people as I want to help. Okay, it just means that there's more good going around. That is my belief. But if your belief, and particularly when you're in a group practice or a DSO, it can be tempting to look around and start getting really worried that if your colleague is doing something, or that girl over there is doing something, or that guy over there is not doing something, that it somehow is going to affect your ability to grow as a clinician. That's just not the case, but it can become a very slippery slope for people.
Totally. I'm going to stop you right there, and we're going to keep going on this. I love this topic. Now, you said, hey, it's okay if other people are in the industry that I'm in, and that doesn't affect the awesomeness that I'm doing and isn't going to slow me down from doing what I want to do. Is that a natural mindset, or is that a mindset you have to put yourself into?
For me, it's natural. But if that's the wrong answer, we can reshoot this part.
No. I don't want to reshoot it. I'm asking because I'll be honest with you. I operate from, and this is me being vulnerable, right? I operate from a scarcity mindset naturally, and I have to stop and I have to look around and go, wait a second. We're doing really good. There's a ton of opportunities, right? They can win, I can win, and everybody can win. And I've noticed this in dental often. I've probably dozens and dozens of times I've had this conversation with dentists where they're like, hey, that dentist down the street, we gotta beat them. And I'm like, well, why do we have to beat them? Well, because, and there's this whole background story about why they don't like them or why they're a competitor to them. And I'm like, you're killing it. Like, you're doing really, really well as a business and you're doing really, really well as a dentist. They can do really well at the same time. And you can both do really well. And there's plenty of people. And here's the interesting thing about the dental industry. I think it's like 40% of people don't even use the dentist, right? Like, so it's not like 100% of the people use the dentist and there's nobody left to do dentistry on. There's a lot of people who are underserved. There's a lot of people who aren't going to the dentist. There's a lot of people who are only partially going to the dentist. There's an literally abundance of opportunity. And when we get into that scarcity mindset, again, I can kind of understand it from the dental's perspective because I tend to operate on that side a little bit more. So that's why I was interested in your opinion on that, like from your mindset. So when you're working with these dentists on the abundance mindset, walk me through the process that you get. Take someone and pretend it's me. If I'm in a scarcity mindset, how do you bring me over to an abundance mindset?
Yeah. So I would want to know, like, Gary, what's your goal here? What do you want?
So I'll give you a real example. So this isn't my mindset anymore, but I used to just be like, well, I want to be like the best dental marketing company in the world.
Okay. Why?
Because I want to win.
Okay. Why?
And that's where I would stop, right? And so I would just be like, well, I don't know. I just want to win. That's my natural inclination, is I just want to go out there and just keep doing stuff and keep crushing it. What really helped me was Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, where he was like,
yes, love Simon.
Gary. Yeah. He said, Gary, or he didn't say Gary. He wrote it in his book, but I applied it to me. He said, Gary, look, you are competing against people who don't know that you're competing against them, and you're playing with a set of rules that you don't know and no one else knows what the rules are. So me being the best dental marketing company in the world, what does that even mean? Who's measuring it? Where's the metrics on it? Does anybody know we're actually playing that game? And what he frames in that book is around how we can move from competing against everybody out there on that like scarcity mindset to competing against yourself. And how do I get better today? And something that I added in there that really helped me was, right now, my biggest goal is, how do I get people around me to be more successful than myself? And that's the competition that I play with myself, is how can I get this leader to be a better leader than I am? Or how can I get this person that I'm working with, like yourself, how can I get them clients and help them get clients by making connections and things like that? And it's a totally different mind shift, but it helps me.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because when you're talking about coaching dentists who are struggling with the same type of thing, when I've got someone saying like, well, if he or she is doing good, then that might impact my ability to do good because we work in the same practice or we work in the same city. Truly, if we can get there, I think the most useful thing is we'll take them to lunch, figure out what are they doing? Like, how can you maximize from each other's talents? Like, what can you learn from this person and what can they learn from you? I really do think there's so much to be gained, like you're saying, by surrounding yourself with a team of strong people rather than trying to do it all on your own, because you're only at the end of the day one person. And so if you're going to do it all, if it's all on you to figure out how to be the best and to figure out how to get the most patients, then you're shutting yourself off from so many options and opportunities.
Yeah. I love this conversation of the fix versus the abundance, because it really does open you up to tons of different ways of thinking and of tackling the problem. And in dental, it's collaboration's huge. If you, or in any industry, if you can get around people who are better than you, you're going to grow. You have no choice but to grow. But if you're the best person in the room all the time, then you're probably not going to grow that much.
Right. And where I was trying, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, where I was swinging back around when I was asking you, like, well, what is your reason? Why do you want a grand slam? Like, what is driving you there? If you don't know, then you might be in scarcity mindset. And if your reason is to impress other people, or because it's going to make your mom happy, or because then you can finally accept yourself as a person or as a professional, whatever your reason is, that will kind of clue you into, am I working from abundance? Am I truly in an abundant mindset, or is there something that I'm trying to cover or solve by creating this result?
100%. Yeah. And that was my mindset for a long time, was just like, I just want to be the best or grow towards this. And it was just like this fleeting thing, right, that I was chasing. And then when I shifted to, okay, how am I going to get a little bit better today? And how am I going to improve and not worry about everybody else and all the noise? It really does. It's liberating, right? Like, it really does free you up, and it really does allow for massive growth as well. Now I'm actually seeing more growth from that. Okay. I have another mindset thing for you. So a lot of dentists are CEOs, right? They're CEO of their 1 or 2 or 4 practices, but they're fractional, right? Because most of them are still practicing dentist or dental. They're still being that clinician. They haven't transitioned out of the chair yet. What do you have? What are some tips that you could give to somebody who's in that transition state from going from the clinician to the executive? What are some tips to really help them make that transition smoothly?
So I think some things that would be really good to know are, what are you really good at, and acknowledge that and plan to utilize those strengths of yours. And then also get really clear at where your areas of opportunity might be. So if that's something that you need to learn, or if that's something that you just know that you struggle with, be open with yourself about those things, because if up until this point you have been successful in kind of covering or hiding those deficiencies or those tendencies, they're going to come up now. And so being aware of them, and then getting the support that you need, and getting the tools that you need to work through them and then make them your strengths, would be where you're going to see yourself grow the most.
That's great. Would you mind sharing with me your table for 3?
Yeah, my table for 3. So I think about this a lot. I think about my past self, my current self, and my future self as if they're separate people sometimes. And it's incredibly useful. If you've never done this, I highly recommend it. But my past self, for example, made my schedule for this week. I did that on Sunday. I mapped out exactly what I was going to do for this week. I took the time to do it. I really thought through. I looked at my list. I tried to be as strategic as I could. And then, like we were talking about earlier, plugged in some things that I know I want to do so that I'm motivated to keep going and I have things to look forward to. If I get to today and I'm like, oh, I don't actually really want to do that podcast, or I don't actually want to create content for module 3 of my course, I can, which do
happens,
that.
Right? That's a real thing, right?
Okay. For sure. Or workouts, especially with workouts, right? You don't even want to put on the clothes, but once you have them on, your mind comes up with 1,000 reasons not to walk out the door. I can do that. I can neglect what I've already planned, but that's incredibly disrespectful to me on Sunday, by the way, because I took the time to plan it for me today. And the me of next week or next month who's hoping for the result of today, somebody's got to do it. So if it's not me today, it's me tomorrow or next week, or I'm suffering without that result that could have been in place. And it always happens. We always look back and we're like, that thing I'm doing today, I wish I had done last week or last month. And I don't want to have those types of recurring thoughts. So I just do the thing and I teach others to do the thing so that next week and next month and next year, you can just enjoy that result and be growing from an elevated position rather than trying to pick up the pieces from a whole bunch of procrastination.
I love that so much. That's so helpful. And it's very true, right? It's very, very true. You gotta, it's holding yourself accountable, but thinking of it in a little bit of a different way. You said one of your things there, you said you're, working on modular 3. I know you've been working with one of my friends, Joshua Scott, and I know you've been working on the entrepreneur mindset for dentist program. Could you share with everybody listening today what that is and how this might be a benefit to them?
Yeah. So I have coached a lot of dentists and I listen closely to what they say, and I've piloted with 2 different groups. I have piloted a program where I took all of the topics that I coach on the most and that seem to be the most effective in creating a foundation for doctors who are working at a group practice or DSO and want to transition to partnership or have already transitioned to partnership roles. And this program takes you through all different things that we talked about today and some that we haven't. And then those are on a self-study or self-paced availability. And then there's supplemental work and activities to strengthen and practice those tools. And then I provide weekly focus calls to clarify what you're working on and get any questions answered that you might have. And so this program is creating amazing results. And so what I'm doing is I'm going out, you mentioned Josh, I'm going to go out there and have them record the course, and so that it can be a little prettier than the modules I've been supplying.
That is so cool. So basically what you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm kind of filtering this through the Gary lens. So a dentist goes to school to learn dentistry. They say, and naturally it's just like, oh, I want to start a practice. And they start this practice, or they go and work for somebody else to save up money to start a practice. But they don't teach anything about entrepreneurship or coming to that table with the other executives or working your way up in the DSO. So this course is something that will help solve that. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's creating amazing results. I've been overwhelmed actually with the feedback that I've gotten. It's been really exciting to be a part of these 2 groups that have tried it out. And I'm very excited. We'll launch it at the end of the year. I'm really excited to put it out there for everyone to access.
I can't wait. When you launch it for everybody, I can't wait to see that, and definitely want to share it. And I know it's going to help a lot of people. And that's one of the main things that really drew me to even speaking through a lot of these things with you about the podcast that we're doing today. Was I knew you were working on this in the background, and so I'm really, really excited about that. Any questions that I forgot to ask you today on the show that you think that the audience might be interested in?
No, I don't think so. You had asked me if I'm leading a DSO, what I would do differently.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If I'm leading a DSO, I want to improve our retention of high quality clinicians, people that we can build a team around, people who produce well, and people that continue to improve. And I know that the highest guarantee that I have to achieving that is providing specialized entrepreneurial training and ongoing support for clinicians. So without this level of specific support, we can probably get really close. But I know that the organizations can only support the growth of clinicians who are choosing to grow. And so we want to provide access to this. And this missing link takes a good organization to becoming unstoppable.
That's so cool. Yeah, I totally agree. And really, that's what's preventing a lot of people's growth right now. I'm going to take this full circle on you and come back to marketing. Right now, I have a lot of clients that are like, hey, we want to grow, but we don't have doctors, or we don't have, whatever position that it is that they need. And you can't grow a dental practice without doctors. It's really hard, right? So you're definitely right on the right track with that. What is last question? Or actually, I got two more questions for you. What is your most impactful marketing campaign that you've ever had in your life? So not something that you ran for your business, but something maybe that was advertised to you earlier on in your life and that lingers with you still today.
You know what's funny that you asked me that question, because we didn't talk about that earlier when we were first talking. So I thought about it a little bit when I saw it in your email. And I think the one that came to mind, I was in the bathroom. It's where you do your best thinking, you're brushing your teeth, right? And so I'm like, the purple mattress campaigns. For some reason, they're funny. They connect. They say relevant things in a way that doesn't sound so serious. And I just really enjoy them personally. I've been thinking, how do I make mind management funny and easy to approach? I'm not sure. I need a commercial like that.
Yeah. Do you own a purple mattress?
I don't own a purple mattress yet, but I've recently got my husband really, really close to agreeing to a king size mattress. He likes the smaller mattresses, but when we do, we'll talk about it.
That's awesome. So how can people find you? If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, my website's currently under construction, should be live by the time this post. So if people want to reach me, it would be at www.dentallife.coach. That's probably the best way.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing these nuggets. We can't wait to get them out there in the world. And just thank you for your time and your expertise.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's good to see you.
You too.